Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club Kids Edition, my favorite edition of all of them. I'm really, it is. For the month of, this is July. Yeah. Welcome, and we've got a really good book here, a book that I love and I have loved for many years, and it's in a new edition here. The Way of the Hive, a honeybee story, formerly known as Clan Apis, and I'm really thrilled to have the Jay Hosler, the Professor Jay Hosler. Right, let's use the title. The author. Hey, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me on. I'm very excited.
Is there, when you're doing a comic like this, where you're trying to show how these organisms live? It is a science comic.
Yeah.
But you're also humanizing them in a way.
Right.
Is there not a risk to doing that, but maybe having people misunderstand because you're anthropomorphizing things that aren't really equivalent. Is that a valid question? I don't know.
I think you have you've identified my greatest challenge.
Yeah.
Right. It is the fact that that in order to draw people into a story. Here's the thing about humans. Mostly they just care about humans. And if that human is themselves, even better.
Yeah.
Right? So at some level, all stories are about humans. And that's not surprising. So yeah, finding a way to tell a story about animals that is not confusingly anthropomorphic, right? Yeah. And so this is a challenge. So let's start with one of the things that I try to work with. Most people know animals can't talk, right? So I think I can get away with that. And what I just have to do is be careful what they say. I know this is sounding glib, but it's not meant to be. It's actually really hard because the human filter is constantly coming through. So let me give you an example of a book I'm sort of working on now. It's on the back burner. I don't know, no publisher or anything lined up yet. But I wanted to tell a story about a parasite, right? And parasites. I heard this radio science show once. This was the last episode I ever watched, in which they were talking about a parasite that sort of took control of the mind of another organism. And one of the science guys was like, "This is evil. This is evil." And I'm like, "Oh man, it's not evil." So it was about an insect that lays their eggs inside a cockroach. I think it was the emerald wasp, and then the egg grows. And I think, nah, man. That's a good mom. That mom laid her egg in food,
right?
And then, tucked it away underground. So when the egg hatches, it's got lots of food. It's doing good mom stuff. And this notion of some things in nature being evil, just really was tough for me. And so finding a way to tell stories in which I can talk about the biology without making it too human-y. Now, that said, it's going to happen, right? And so what can I focus on in, say, The Way of the Hive? I can focus on family, right? So the sisters in a hive, they're all working together. Do I have sisters having clear immediate relationships? So like with Devora and Nuyuki, absolutely. Does that happen in a hive? Probably not. And so there is a certain element of there's a lot of element of difficulty. I'm not sure how well I'm answering this question, because you can see that it's something I still struggle with. Sure. But there is I think there's a certain amount of anthropomorphization you can get away with because the reader knows that's not the way it is.
Sure.
And I try to skate that line, and I think that sometimes I haven't succeeded. But I think most of the time I have. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think. Well, I mean,
it's a tremendously good question.
Sure. Well, I mean, the only thing I'll say is I have picked 2 of your books so far to be like, I think these are among the best books for children. So I think that you're doing a pretty good job.
Yes.
What's your piece of advice for these people, who want to create, who want to do a thing, who want to express themselves? It can be technical, it can be philosophical, it can be emotional, whatever it is. What's your piece, buddy?
I think that it goes back to having a deadline and getting feedback. So when I was doing cartoons as an undergraduate and as a graduate student, people are brutal in their feedback, right? They'll tell you when it's funny and they'll tell you when it's not. And knowing that as a writer, for example, or knowing when an image is good or an image is confusing, how are you going to know that unless you're producing stuff that people can provide feedback on?
Yeah.
And so for me and my generation, we didn't have the web. We had, newspaper, school newspapers. That was about it. But now you can have, there are folks on Instagram that produce serialized images that you can download. There are places like Webtoons. There are places where you can go and put your stuff up in a community that's already sort of interested in it and garner oftentimes legitimate, authentic feedback that are going to help you grow. And I think that is, to me, the best advice. As long as you understand, unless you're a savant, it's not going to happen fast. Yeah. So for me, my first comic came out, at the start of my postdoc, which would have been in 96. I was born in 66. So I was 30.
Yeah.
So that's a whole bunch of practice to lead up to that. And it wasn't until 2000 that, it was collected into a volume. So I was 34.
Yeah.
So know so emotionally that you're going to have to practice. If you practice in private and never show yourself to anything, it's no better than alchemy. It doesn't exist. It has to be in the world, someplace, where you can get feedback from people who are willing to help you. Then what happens is you get better. Yeah. And as you get better, as you become a better writer, you get better timing, you hear dialogue better, then you start to open yourself up to a possibility of doing something larger. The other thing that's really nice about these places, let me pick Instagram, because I'm not gonna, I'm not shilling for Facebook or anybody, but the design of it is a portfolio, right? So yeah. If you're working on stuff and you are consistently putting stuff up and you're tweaking and improving, when the time comes, you can send a link to somebody, an agent or an editor or somebody, and they can look through your stuff and get a sense of the breadth of what you're capable of doing. But it all comes down to, I think, finding a way to force yourself to practice constantly. Yeah. Art is, you are not born an artist any more than someone is born a basketball player or born a scientist. It all requires practice. And so I think that there are so many tools now available that make it possible for you to practice and have a deadline that I think it's a great time actually to get into cartooning.
Lovely. I love that answer. That is a fantastic answer. And this is a fantastic book. And I want to thank you for it. I really do. It's smart. It's funny. It's enjoyable. It's human, even though it's completely about insects. It's everything you want in a piece of entertainment, I think. So
Well, I appreciate it. It's actually a deeply personal book because Niyuki was struggling at the time with what I struggled with at the time, which was really a fear of change and a fear of death, which was something that I'd always sort of struggled with for whatever reason. And so for me, very personal, very cathartic. She was braver than me, and she helped me be brave.